In the heart of a frost-covered New York City, a busy businessman named James finds himself drawn to a young girl named Lily, sitting alone and shivering on the sidewalk. James, a man known for his stern demeanor and unwavering focus on his work, is unexpectedly moved by Lily's vulnerability. What begins as a spontaneous act of kindness inviting Lily into his warm apartment and offering her a meal quickly unfolds into a profound journey of connection and self-discovery. As James learns more about Lily's heartbreaking past, her father's abandonment, and her mother's absence, he is confronted with echoes of his painful childhood. In his quest to provide Lily with a sense of safety, James uncovers a deeper truth that intertwines their lives in ways he never anticipated. The revelation that Lily is his daughter brings a whirlwind of emotions and the opportunity for both redemption and healing. This story of unexpected encounters and heartfelt revelations reminds us that sometimes the smallest acts of compassion can lead to the most profound changes in our lives. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. On a piercingly cold December morning, New York City lay cloaked beneath a delicate shroud of frost, transforming its usually vibrant streets into a glistening, frigid expanse. The city buzzed with its typical energy, yet the icy wind that swept through the intersections seemed to amplify the chill, creating an atmosphere of harsh, unrelenting cold that seeped into every corner. Amidst this wintry tableau, James, a middle-aged magnate renowned for his vast fortune, hurried through the bustling avenues toward an imperative business engagement. His mind was a maelstrom of numbers and strategic discussions, entirely absorbed in the gravity of the deals he was poised to negotiate. Though his wealth was considerable, James was known for his unyielding determination and an almost permanent, grave expression. He carried himself with the demeanor of a man burdened by invisible chains, his life governed by reason and control. As he navigated one of the busy downtown intersections, a sudden and unexpected sight halted him in his tracks. On the periphery of the sidewalk, a young girl sat alone, her frail body barely shielded by clothing that was worn and threadbare. She clutched a small, flimsy plastic cup, the kind used to collect spare change, as though it were a fragile lifeline amidst the sea of indifferent passers-by. Her eyes, large and profoundly sad, were filled with a poignant mixture of resignation and desperation, observing the hurried flow of the city with a haunting, almost spectral quality. For a man who had meticulously shielded himself from the world's raw, often harsh realities, James felt an unfamiliar, intense tightness in his chest. He had cultivated a life insulated from the vicissitudes of fate, his existence a testament to an unwavering focus on business and personal control. Yet the sight of this small, vulnerable figure seemed to pierce through his carefully constructed barriers, stirring a deep, unexpected emotion within him. He found himself inexplicably drawn to her plight, compelled by an impulse he struggled to understand. With a disconcerting sense of urgency, James slowed his pace, his usually deliberate steps faltering as he approached the girl. The stark contrast between his usual brisk movements and this sudden, almost instinctive halt underscored the gravity of the moment. Standing before her, he spoke with a gentleness that was at odds with his usual assertive demeanor, his voice imbued with a surprising warmth that cut through the frigid air. "Hello," he began, the word emerging softer and more tentative than he had anticipated. "What's your name? What's your name?" The girl raised her gaze slowly, her eyes reflecting a wary, almost fearful vulnerability. Her voice, when she spoke, was a mere whisper, barely discernible over the cacophony of the city's relentless activity. "Lily, sir," she murmured, her voice a fragile whisper against the backdrop of urban noise. As James heard her name, a profound wave of empathy surged through him, an emotion so alien to his usual rational demeanor that it left him momentarily unsettled. The business acumen and self-discipline that had always guided him seemed to falter in the face of this raw, human connection. James felt an overwhelming surge of compassion, an emotion that seemed to breach the walls of his previously unshakable control. "What are you doing here, Lily?" he asked, his voice tinged with a deep, genuine concern. The question, though simple, carried an undercurrent of empathy and curiosity that reflected the unexpected shift in his emotional landscape. He knew that her response would likely be as stark and unyielding as the winter weather surrounding them, yet he felt compelled to understand the story behind this poignant, fleeting encounter. "I'm cold and hungry," Lily murmured, her voice barely rising above a whisper, her gaze dropping as though the admission was a burden she could scarcely bear. James found himself momentarily frozen, unable to move or speak. There was an undeniable quality in Lily's fragile state that struck a deep, forgotten chord within him, reminding him of something he had long tried to bury. Without a second thought, driven by an impulse he couldn't quite articulate, he crouched beside her, his heart racing with a newfound urgency. "Come with me," he said softly, extending his hand toward her with an earnestness that was unusual for him. "Let's get you somewhere warm, and I'll make sure you have something to eat." The simplicity of his offer seemed to carry a depth of sincerity that cut through Lily's usual skepticism. She hesitated, her experiences with empty promises making her wary, yet there was an indefinable quality in James's voice, a reassuring warmth that coaxed her to trust him, if only for a moment. With tentative resolve, she placed her small, chilled hand in his, and he gently helped her to her feet. As they made their way through the bustling streets, James couldn't shake the whirlwind of thoughts that overtook him. Here he was, a man consumed by deadlines and decisions, momentarily abandoning his meticulously planned schedule to assist a stranger. The profound contrast between his usual focus on business and this unexpected act of kindness felt almost surreal. But as he glanced over at Lily, her vulnerable form illuminated by the soft glow of the streetlights, he couldn't deny that something greater than his daily obligations was unfolding. When they reached James's opulent apartment, a sleek, expansive space that had always seemed to him a cold, hollow echo of luxury, Lily's eyes widened in astonishment. The lavish surroundings were a stark contrast to the harshness she had endured. James guided her to the living room, where he turned on the heater and retrieved a plush, warm blanket. He draped it around her, his movements imbued with a tenderness that belied his usual detachment. "Sit down here," he instructed gently. "I'll prepare something for you to eat." As he headed to the kitchen, the simple act of preparing a meal took on a significance far beyond its mundane nature. With each movement, he felt an unfamiliar stirring within himself, a quiet yet profound awakening that defied explanation. The presence of this young girl, so fragile and in need, seemed to unearth memories he had long tried to forget. When James returned, he found Lily nestled comfortably in the blanket, her gaze fixed on the window, a distant, contemplative look on her face. The sight tugged at his heartstrings, evoking a deep sense of empathy and curiosity. "Here you go," he said softly, offering her a plate of food. "Eat slowly, you're safe now." Lily accepted the plate with trembling hands, and as she began to eat, it was clear how ravenously hungry she was. James took a seat in a nearby chair, his eyes never leaving her. He sat in silence, his mind racing with questions. He was eager to understand her story, to uncover the circumstances that had led this young girl to such a dire situation. The encounter had stirred something within him, a profound need to connect and understand the depths of her struggle. "Where are your parents?" Lily, James inquired, his voice soft and compassionate, as he tried to navigate the delicate territory of her pain. Lily's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and for a moment she stared at the floor, her small frame trembling with the weight of her emotions. "My dad," she began, her voice quivering, "he left me here in the city. He and my mom had a huge fight, and he just walked away, leaving me behind." Her words cracked with raw sorrow, and she wrapped the blanket around herself more tightly, as though it could provide a barrier against her heartache. James felt a profound ache in his chest, a pang of empathy that reverberated through him. Lily's words seemed to unearth fragments of his past memories of a childhood he had painstakingly buried. As he gazed at her, he saw echoes of his lost innocence reflected in her tearful eyes. "You're not alone anymore," Lily James assured her, his voice thick with an emotion he hadn't anticipated. "I'm going to help you." The simple, heartfelt promise carried an earnestness that he hadn't known he was capable of, and it was a pledge that would soon unravel the boundaries of his own carefully controlled life. Unbeknownst to James, this act of kindness was about to initiate a transformation in his life beyond his wildest expectations. As the soothing warmth of the apartment enveloped Lily, gradually thawing her frozen limbs and dispelling the deep chill that had settled in her bones, she began to relax. Each bite of the meal she consumed seemed to ease the tension that had gripped her since their encounter began. James watched her intently, noting the subtle shifts in her posture and expression. Yet, beneath the growing comfort, there remained a shadow of sorrow in her eyes, an inexplicable heaviness that seemed too burdensome for one so young. "Do you feel better now?" James asked gently, mindful not to press too hard, too quickly. Lily nodded, her gaze still cast downward, though the tension in her shoulders had eased somewhat. "Yes, sir." "Thank you for everything." Her use of sir felt like a barrier, a form of formal distance that separated her from the intimacy of the moment. It was as though she needed to shield herself from the warmth and kindness that she had rarely encountered. James leaned forward slightly, his voice filled with reassurance and tenderness. "You don't need to call me Sir Lily," he said, striving to sound as comforting and approachable as possible. "My name is James and you can talk to me. I'm here to help." Lily hesitated, her small hand still clutching the edges of the blanket, as if it were her only defense against the world's harsh realities. It was clear that she was wrestling with the decision to open up or to retreat further into her protective shell. The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of her unspoken pain. After what felt like an eternity, she took a deep breath, her resolve visibly hardening, and began to speak, her voice trembling as she took the first tentative steps toward sharing her story. "It's been really hard since my dad left," Lily began, her voice so soft it was almost a whisper, carrying the weight of her young suffering. "He and my mom used to fight all the time. I didn't always understand what they were arguing about, but I knew it was terrible. One night, the fighting was worse than ever. I heard my mom crying, and then he just left. He took me with him to the city, but after just a few days, he just abandoned me here." James's heart tightened painfully as he listened to her story, each word a piercing reminder of the helplessness and fear she had endured. The tremor in her voice resonated deeply with him, evoking memories of his childhood, of his father's harshness, and the suffocating expectations that had shaped his early years. He struggled to suppress these recollections, focusing instead on the young girl before him. "And your mom?" he asked gently, his concern palpable. Lily shook her head slowly, tears pooling in her eyes and spilling over. "I don't know where she is. My dad never let me talk to her. He said she didn't care about me anymore, but I didn't believe him. I can't bring myself to believe it." James leaned back, his mind racing to comprehend the depth of her ordeal. The gravity of her situation was more severe than he had initially imagined. This wasn't merely the story of a lost child, it was a tale of profound betrayal and emotional devastation inflicted by those who should have offered love and protection. "I'm so sorry, Lily," he said, his voice thick with sympathy. "No one should ever have to endure what you've been through." Lily dabbed at her eyes with the back of her hand, her sniffles breaking the silence. "It's not your fault," she said softly, her gratitude shining through her tears. "You've been so kind to me. I don't understand why you're helping me, but I'm grateful." James offered a faint smile, his own eyes reflecting the sadness he felt for her plight. "I'm helping you because you deserve it, Lily," he said with sincerity. "You deserve to feel safe and to be cared for. I promise you, I will do everything in my power to ensure that you're okay." At that moment, James felt a profound shift within himself. The act of helping Lily had not only begun to mend the broken pieces of her world, but also ignited a spark of purpose and compassion in his own heart. For a few moments, the room was enveloped in silence, with only the gentle hum of the heater breaking the stillness. Lily's gaze remained fixed on James, her eyes searching his face with an intensity that suggested she was weighing his sincerity and gauging whether she could truly place her trust in him. The vulnerability and hope she saw in his eyes seemed to provide the reassurance she needed, and slowly, a small, tentative smile emerged through her tears. "Okay," she whispered, her voice tinged with a fragile hope that spoke volumes. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over James' relief mingled with a fierce determination. He had made a solemn promise to Lily, and now, more than ever, he was resolved to fulfill it. As he observed her, nestled into the couch with the blanket wrapped around her like a cocoon of comfort, a new and urgent thought began to take shape in his mind. He realized that his commitment to helping Lily couldn't end with just this moment of temporary relief. He needed to delve deeper, to uncover the truth about what had happened with her parents, and to find her mother. Only by understanding the full scope of her situation could he provide the genuine safety and stability that Lily so desperately needed. However, the notion of seeking out her mother brought with it a profound sense of unease. James couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that he might be on the brink of uncovering something far more complex and painful than he had initially imagined. Despite the apprehension, he knew there was no turning back. He had already become deeply entangled in Lily's story, and his sense of responsibility compelled him to see it through. "Lily," he said gently, breaking the contemplative silence that had settled between them, "I'm going to help you find your mom. We'll figure this out together, all right?" Lily's eyes widened, a turbulent mix of fear and hope flitting across her face. "Do you think we can find her?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper, revealing her deep-seated uncertainty. James met her gaze with unwavering resolve. "I do," he said firmly, "and I won't rest until we do." As he spoke, a profound sense of determination enveloped him. This commitment to helping Lily had evolved into something much larger. It was no longer just about assisting a young girl in distress. It had become a journey of confronting his unresolved pain and grappling with the shadows of his past. In reaching out to help Lily, he might also find a way to heal the wounds that had long been buried within him. As the night blanketed New York City in its deep, velvety embrace, the usual hustle and bustle of the streets began to wane, giving way to a tranquil, almost somber quiet. Inside James's apartment, however, the atmosphere was imbued with a different kind of energy. Lily, now enveloped in a cocoon of warmth and safety, had drifted into a peaceful slumber on the couch. Her petite form, wrapped snugly in the soft blanket, seemed to exude a fragile sense of calm. Yet even in her sleep, a faint shadow of sadness lingered on her face, a poignant reminder of the trials she had faced that tugged at James's heartstrings. James, seated in the armchair across from her, was caught in the whirlwind of his thoughts. His gaze remained fixed on Lily as his mind grappled with the profound weight of her story. The echoes of her experiences resonated deeply within him, stirring memories of his past and creating an unsettling sense of familiarity. He couldn't shake the feeling that this situation was a reflection of something far more personal, a connection that transcended mere coincidence. Determined to help Lily, James retrieved his phone and began to search for resources, shelters, and organizations that might aid in locating Lily's mother. Each keystroke and phone call was a step towards unraveling the tangled narrative of Lily's past. The task seemed monumental, but he was propelled by an urgent, newfound sense of purpose. James understood that this was merely the beginning of a complex and challenging journey. Finding Lily's mother would undoubtedly be fraught with difficulties, and the path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty. Yet amidst the uncertainty, one truth emerged clearly: James's life had irrevocably shifted. His interaction with Lily had reopened a door to a long-suppressed desire, a deep-seated need to connect with others and to extend genuine care. As the night grew darker and the city outside continued its ceaseless rhythm, James remained in the quiet of his apartment, steadfast in his resolve to make a difference. His commitment was not only to Lily but also, perhaps, to a personal rediscovery and healing. Meanwhile, as they prepared to leave the apartment and head back to James's car, Sarah's silence was palpable. Her thoughts seemed distant, clouded by the weight of the situation. James chose not to press her for conversation, understanding that she needed time to process the overwhelming circumstances. The drive was shrouded in heavy, tense silence, each moment filled with the gravity of their shared mission. As they approached the building, James glanced over at Sarah, noticing the tension in her posture, the way her hands were tightly clenched in her lap. With a gentle voice, he broke the silence, trying to offer reassurance. "Sarah," he said softly, pulling up to the front of the building, "you can do this. Lily needs to see that you're here for her." Sarah took a deep breath, her shoulders relaxing slightly as she nodded in response. The weight of the moment was still present, but James's words seemed to provide a glimmer of resolve and hope. "I know," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. I'm scared, James. I don't want to let her down again." James, his gaze steady and reassuring, responded with a quiet but firm confidence. "You won't. You're here now, and that's what truly matters." They exited the car and made their way up to the apartment, each step weighed down by the gravity of the moment. James felt the mounting tension, a palpable sense of anticipation mixed with a tinge of hope. He unlocked the door and ushered Sarah inside, where Lily sat on the couch, her gaze fixed on the television. Despite its flickering images, it was evident she wasn't truly watching. At the sound of the door opening, her head turned sharply, and her eyes widened in astonishment as she saw Sarah standing in the doorway. Mom Lily's voice was a fragile whisper, laden with disbelief, as if her mind was struggling to grasp the reality of the scene before her. Sarah took a hesitant step forward, her voice trembling as she spoke. "It's me, sweetheart. I'm here." For a suspended moment, Lily's eyes locked onto her mother's, searching for confirmation. Then, overwhelmed by a flood of emotions, she sprang from the couch and hurled herself into Sarah's arms. The sobs that racked her small frame were heart-wrenching, a raw and unrestrained outpouring of grief and relief. Sarah clung to her daughter, her tears mingling with Lily's as she whispered soothing words, her voice a tender balm against the turmoil. James, standing at the threshold, felt an unexpected swell of emotion. Watching the reunion unfold, he was acutely aware of the emotional depth of the moment. The apartment was bathed in a cocoon of intimate sounds, Sarah's comforting murmurs, Lily's muffled sobs, all blending with the distant hum of the city. James found himself emotionally swept up in the scene, his own heart aching with a mixture of empathy and introspection. As time drifted on, Sarah gently guided Lily back to the couch, settling beside her with an aura of protective tenderness. The two were seated closely, their hands clasped tightly, their shared warmth a poignant testament to their rekindled bond. James, though still stationed near the doorway, felt an unspoken connection to their reunion. The act of reuniting mother and daughter was more than a simple task, it was a profound journey into the heart of their collective pain and hope. Lily, her voice still shaky with vulnerability, looked up at Sarah with tear-filled eyes. "Mom, why did Dad leave me? What did I do wrong?" Sarah's face twisted with a heart-wrenching sorrow. She shook her head, pulling Lily closer as if to shield her from further hurt. "Oh, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. Your father, he just made a terrible mistake. None of this is your fault." James felt a sharp, piercing pang in his chest at Sarah's words. The emotional weight of the moment, combined with the intensity of the familial pain, was almost too much to bear. He had always considered himself adept at maintaining emotional detachment, at keeping his feelings in check. Yet now, he struggled to maintain his composure. There was something in the way Sarah spoke, in the way she looked at Lily, that suggested an unspoken truth, a deeper layer of the story that remained hidden. Sensing James's internal struggle, Sarah looked up, her eyes meeting his with an expression that was both grateful and enigmatic. There was a hesitance in her gaze, a moment of unspoken communication that hinted at something more. She seemed to wrestle with her thoughts, her voice emerging in a soft, uncertain murmur, as if she were choosing her words carefully. "We need to talk," Sarah finally said, her voice trembling. "There's more you need to know, and I owe it to both of you, to be honest." James, caught in the emotional whirlwind of the moment, nodded solemnly. The journey they had embarked upon was far from over. He was prepared to face whatever lay ahead, knowing that in helping Lily and Sarah, he was also confronting the unresolved echoes of his past. The room felt suffused with a heavy silence, each heartbeat echoing the gravity of the revelation. James's mind raced to comprehend Sarah's confession, his emotions swirling in a tumultuous mix of shock, disbelief, and a deep, profound ache. The revelation that Lily was his daughter, something he had never anticipated, had turned his world upside down in a matter of moments. James's gaze was locked on Sarah, his heart struggling to absorb the weight of her words. He saw the fear in her eyes, the way she clung to Lily's hand, as if it was her lifeline. The intensity of the situation made the air in the room feel thick and charged. Each breath James took laden with the realization of a hidden truth now exposed. "What is it?" Sarah James's voice was a fragile thread of calm, trying to anchor himself amidst the storm of emotions. Sarah took a deep, shaky breath, her eyes darting between James and Lily. "James, Lily's father isn't who you think he is. He's not some random man I met after high school. He's you." Time seemed to stretch and distort, the enormity of Sarah's words crashing over James like a tidal wave. He stared at her, unable to fully grasp the revelation. It felt as if the very foundation of his reality had been shaken. He stood there, a million thoughts and feelings colliding, unable to fully process the truth. "I'm Lily's father," James repeated, his voice a whisper, as though speaking it aloud would confirm the reality of it all. Sarah nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes, James, she's your daughter. I found out I was pregnant a few months after we reconnected that one night. But by then you had already left for college and I didn't know how to tell you, so I didn't." The weight of Sarah's admission pressed heavily on James. He felt an intense rush of emotions: shock, disbelief, anger, and a burgeoning sense of something profound and overwhelming. He turned his gaze to Lily, who looked up at him with eyes full of confusion and hope. "Dad," Lily's voice was soft, trembling with uncertainty. James's heart ached as he took a step closer, the reality of the situation hitting him with undeniable force. "Lily, I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know." Lily's eyes searched his face, her hope mingled with a palpable fear. "You're my dad." James knelt in front of her, his hands shaking as he gently took hers in his. "Yes, Lily, I'm your dad. I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you, but I'm here now. I promise you, I'm not going anywhere." As he spoke, James felt a profound sense of responsibility settles over him. The past couldn't be undone, and the pain of missed years couldn't be erased, but he was determined to be there for Lily now. The emotional weight of the moment was heavy, but it also carried with it the potential for healing and reconnection. Sarah watched, her tears mingling with Lily's as she saw the tentative but genuine bond forming between father and daughter. The silence in the room was now filled with a fragile sense of hope, as if the healing process had just begun. James, his heart still reeling from the revelation, knew that the road ahead would be complex and challenging. But at that moment, As he held Lily's hands, he made a silent vow to be the father she needed, to mend the broken pieces of their lives and move forward with compassion and commitment. The soft light from the lamp casts a warm, golden glow over the room, highlighting the tender scene unfolding on the couch. Lily's small body nestled into James's embrace, her tiny hands gripping his shirt as if afraid he might vanish. Sarah, her face streaked with tears, watched with a mixture of relief and sorrow as the once hidden truth finally came to light. The weight of years of separation and hidden pain seemed to dissolve, replaced by the fragile but hopeful beginnings of a new family dynamic. James felt an overwhelming surge of emotions: joy, regret, and a deep, unshakable resolve. The promises he had made to Lily, the vow to be there for her, resonated deeply within him. His life had been filled with ambition and the pursuit of success, but in this quiet moment, holding his daughter close, he found a purpose that transcended material wealth. He was finally confronting his past, and in doing so, he was beginning to forge a future that mattered more than anything he had ever pursued before. Sarah approached cautiously, her tears mingling with a small, hopeful smile. She reached out to touch James's shoulder, her voice trembling with a mix of apology and gratitude. "Thank you, James, for everything. I know this is a lot to take in, and I'm sorry for keeping it from you." James looked up at her, his heart still heavy, but now filled with a renewed sense of commitment. "Sarah, we can't change the past, but we can move forward. Lily needs us, and I'm here. I'm ready to be a father to her, to help her heal." Sarah nodded, her eyes reflecting the depth of her own emotions. "I know, and I'm here too. We'll figure this out together." James returned his focus to Lily, who was still clinging to him, her tears now mixed with a sense of tentative hope. He gently wiped her tears with his thumb, his voice steady and full of reassurance. "We're going to start fresh, Lily. We'll face whatever comes our way, and we'll do it together. You have nothing to fear, not with me by your side." Lily looked up at him, her eyes filled with a blend of hope and vulnerability. "Promise." James nodded, his voice filled with conviction. "I promise. You're my daughter, and I'm not going anywhere." As the minutes passed, the tension in the room began to ease, replaced by the soft sounds of whispered reassurances and the comforting presence of a family reunited. James knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but in that moment, surrounded by Lily and Sarah, he felt a profound sense of purpose and connection. The past could not be changed, but the future was wide open, filled with the possibility of healing and rediscovery. In the quiet of the apartment, the three of them sat together, each finding solace in the other's presence. James felt a renewed sense of hope and determination. For the first time in a long time, he felt truly alive, his heart anchored in the love and responsibility of being a father. The journey ahead would be long and uncertain, but as he held Lily and Sarah close, he knew that they had the strength to face it together. And that, more than anything, was a reason to believe that they would be okay. James's words hung in the air, a stark contrast to the cold, calculated environment of his father's office. The room, filled with the trophies and accolades of James's success, suddenly seemed distant and irrelevant. The confrontation was more than a reckoning, it was a declaration of his newfound purpose. His father looked at him with a mix of surprise and skepticism, the facade of control slipping ever so slightly. "And you think you can just change everything overnight? That you can erase the way you were raised?" James took a deep breath, the weight of his father's disbelief only strengthening his resolve. "I can't erase the past, but I can shape the future. I've learned from my mistakes, from the way I was raised, and I'm determined to do better. For Lily's sake, and my own." His father's gaze grew distant, as if considering the implications of James's words. "You think you're going to make a difference? That being there for her will make up for everything." James shook his head. "It's not about making up for anything. It's about doing what's right. I want Lily to grow up knowing that she's valued, that she's loved for who she is, not for some arbitrary standard. That's the kind of father I want to be." The room fell silent, the hum of the city outside barely penetrating the tension within. James's father seemed to struggle with his emotions, his usual composure wavering. Finally, he spoke, his voice softer, though still tinged with doubt. "You may think you know what's best, but parenting is never simple. You'll face challenges you can't anticipate." James nodded, a flicker of determination in his eyes. "I know it won't be easy. I'm not expecting it to be, but I'm ready to face those challenges. I've lived my life according to someone else's expectations for too long. Now it's time to live according to my own." His father's expression was inscrutable, but there was a moment of recognition in his eyes, as if seeing James for the first time in a different light. "Well, James," he said finally, his voice almost begrudgingly respectful, "if you're committed to this, then I suppose all I can do is wish you luck. You'll need it." James felt a strange mix of relief and residual tension. "Thank you, I'll take that." As he turned to leave, James glanced back at his father, who was now seated behind his desk, a complex blend of emotions on his face. This encounter had been a crucial step in James's journey, a final confrontation with his past that had given him the clarity he needed to move forward. With renewed purpose, James exited the office, his mind already focused on the future. He had a daughter to care for, a new chapter to embrace, and a life to rebuild not defined by the constraints of his past, but by the love and commitment he now felt. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, James felt ready to face it head-on, guided by the hope of making a positive difference in his daughter's life and his own. James's encounter with his father had been transformative, a turning point that allowed him to break free from the shadows of his past. As he walked through the door of his apartment, the sight of Lily's beaming face was a balm to his soul. Her joy was infectious, and it reminded him of what he had been striving for all along. Lily wrapped her arms around him, and James felt a profound sense of belonging and purpose. He realized that his journey wasn't just about reconciling with his past, but also about building a future filled with love, support, and genuine connection. Sarah watched them, her eyes reflecting a mix of relief and hope. She had seen the toll the past had taken on James and knew that this moment was a significant step in their shared journey. The weight of old grievances seemed to dissolve in the warmth of the present. James set Lily down gently and took Sarah's hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "I talked with my father today," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. He admitted that he made mistakes, that maybe he was wrong about a lot of things. It was hard to hear, but it also helped me see things more clearly. Sarah nodded, her expression softening. "I'm glad to hear that. It must have been incredibly difficult, but it sounds like it gave you the closure you needed." James nodded. "It did. And now I want to focus on our family. I want to make sure Lily knows she's loved, and I want to be the kind of father she deserves." Lily, still clinging to James's side, looked up at him with wide eyes. "Daddy, are we going to stay together now? Like forever?" James knelt to her level, his heart swelling with affection. "Yes, sweetheart, we're going to stay together, and we're going to make sure that every day is filled with love and happiness." Lily's face lit up with a radiant smile, her earlier fears seemingly vanishing. She hugged James tightly, her trust in him evident. Sarah joined them, wrapping her arms around both James and Lily, creating a circle of warmth and unity. As they stood together in their little apartment, the noise of the outside world seemed to fade away. The future was still uncertain, and there would undoubtedly be challenges along the way. But in that moment, surrounded by the people he loved most, James felt a deep sense of contentment. He had faced his past and made peace with it, and now he was ready to embrace the future with a heart full of hope. They spent the evening together, talking, laughing, and enjoying each other's company. It was a new beginning, one that promised a brighter, more fulfilling path forward. For the first time in a long time, James felt a sense of true happiness, knowing that he was exactly where he was meant to be with the family he had always longed for, and a renewed sense of purpose guiding him into the future. James's protective instincts were sharper than ever, and the recent events had only strengthened his resolve. He knew that safeguarding Lily's physical security was just one part of the equation. Her emotional well-being was equally important. The unease in the house was palpable, and James was determined to address it. He was vigilant, checking the locks and security system with an almost obsessive routine. The thought of anything happening to Lily was unbearable, and the haunting words of the former guardian, "You haven't seen the last of me," were a constant reminder of the potential threat. As the days wore on, James found solace in small routines that could offer a semblance of normalcy. He made sure to spend quality time with Lily and Sarah, engaging in activities that could bring some joy back into their lives. Yet, despite these efforts, Lily's earlier exuberance was replaced by a more subdued demeanor. That evening, the atmosphere at home was quieter than usual. James noticed Lily sitting on the couch, clutching her book but not truly reading. Her gaze was distant, her usual sparkle dimmed. James knew he needed to reach out to her, to assure her that she was safe and loved. Sitting beside her, he gently broke the silence. "Hey, Lily," he began, trying to keep his voice as soothing as possible. "Do you want to talk about what happened?" Lily's eyes met his briefly before she looked away. Closing her book, she leaned into him, seeking comfort. "Is he gone, Dad? Is he going to come back?" James felt a pang in his heart at the vulnerability in her voice. He wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. "He's gone, sweetheart. I've made sure of it. We've taken every precaution to keep him away from us. You're safe here, I promise." Lily's worried eyes still lingered on him, her anxiety clear. "I'm scared," she whispered. "What if he tries to take me away?" The protective fury within James flared, but he kept his tone calm and firm. "That's not going to happen. I won't let it. Your mom and I are here to protect you, and we'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe." Sarah, who had been quietly listening from the kitchen, came over and joined them on the couch. She enveloped both James and Lily in a comforting embrace, her presence adding an extra layer of security and love. "We're in this together," she said softly. "We're a family now, and we'll stay together. No one is going to take you away from us." Lily looked up at her, her eyes still glistening with unshed tears, but a small, hopeful smile began to form. The reassurance from both her parents seemed to ease some of her fear. James looked at Sarah, his heart full of gratitude for her unwavering support. Together they were a united front, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. He knew that rebuilding Lily's trust and sense of security would take time, but with love, patience, and their collective strength, they could overcome anything. As they sat together, the warmth of their shared embrace and the comforting words exchanged brought a measure of peace to the room. It wasn't a complete resolution, but it was a beginning of healing and rebuilding their lives. James looked at Lily and Sarah, feeling a renewed sense of hope and determination. He knew that their path forward wouldn't be easy, but they would face it together. The strength of their bond would be their greatest asset as they worked to build a future free from fear and filled with love. James's efforts to ensure their safety were paying off. The sense of unease that had once pervaded their home was gradually being replaced by a feeling of stability and hope. Lily's laughter, which had been so fleeting, was now returning more frequently, a sign that she was beginning to heal from the trauma she had endured. The meeting with the lawyer had been productive, and the restraining order was now in place. James felt a small but significant weight lift from his shoulders with each new precaution he put into effect. The panic button app provided an extra layer of reassurance, a tool that helped Sarah and Lily feel more in control of their safety. As time passed, the home that had once felt like a place of tension and fear was slowly transforming into a sanctuary of love and security. Lily's bright eyes and genuine smiles were becoming more common, and the shadows of fear that had once clouded her expression were fading away. One evening, after a particularly peaceful day, James and Sarah found themselves sitting on the balcony, enjoying the cool evening air and the shimmering city lights. The tranquility of the moment was a welcome change, and it gave them both a chance to reflect on the progress they had made. Sarah's hand rested gently on James's knee, a gesture of both comfort and affection. "I think she's starting to feel safe again," she said softly, her voice filled with relief and gratitude. "You've done so much to protect us, James. I don't know how to thank you." James's gaze was fixed on the cityscape below, his thoughts drifting through the past few weeks. "You don't need to thank me, Sarah," he replied, his voice steady. "I'm just doing what any father would do." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder, a contented sigh escaping her. Not every father would go to these lengths. "You've given her a sense of security she's never had before, and you've given me something I thought I'd lost a long time ago, hope." James turned to face her, his heart swelling with emotion. "We've given each other hope," he said, his voice tinged with deep feeling. "I found something with you and Lily that I never thought I'd have again. I want to make sure we hold on to it, no matter what challenges come our way." Their shared silence was comforting, the night enveloping them in its calm embrace. The world below seemed less daunting, and for the first time in a long while, James allowed himself to believe in the possibility of a brighter future. As he rose to go inside, he took one last look at the city lights, a sense of tranquility washing over him. He was ready to face whatever came next, confident that, together, they could weather any storm. The future was uncertain, but with Sarah and Lily by his side, James felt prepared to confront it with courage and hope. James's heart raced as he absorbed the detective's words. The sense of security they had started to rebuild seemed to shatter with each revelation. The man who had threatened their peace was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. "Is there anything specific you need us to do?" James asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Detective Reynolds' tone was firm but reassuring. "Continue to stay vigilant. Keep all security measures in place and avoid any direct contact with him. We'll increase patrols around your area and provide additional support if necessary. We'll also advise you to document any suspicious activity." James took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. "Thank you, Detective. I'll make sure to follow your advice." After ending the call, James felt a wave of helplessness wash over him. He was doing everything he could to protect his family, but now the threat seemed even more imminent. He needed to inform Sarah and take immediate action. When he arrived home that evening, he found Sarah and Lily in the living room, engaged in a game of cards. The sight of their contentment, their laughter, filled James with a mix of determination and dread. He knew he had to share the news, but he also knew he needed to be careful about how he approached it. "Sarah, can we talk for a moment?" James said, trying to keep his voice calm. Sarah looked up, sensing the gravity in his tone. She nodded, setting aside the cards. They moved to the kitchen, where James recounted the conversation with Detective Reynolds, detailing the renewed threat and the need to remain vigilant. Sarah's face paled as she listened, her hand instinctively reaching for James's. "What do we do now?" James took a deep breath, trying to quell the rising panic. "We stick to our plan. We keep the security measures in place, stay alert, and avoid any risky situations. And we should make sure Lily knows that we're keeping her safe, so she doesn't feel scared." Sarah nodded, her eyes filled with worry but also determination. "We'll get through this. We have to." James wrapped his arms around her, drawing strength from her resolve. "We will," he said firmly. "We've faced challenges before, and we've come through them stronger. This is no different." They went back to Lily, who was now looking up at them with a mixture of curiosity and concern. James gently reassured her, keeping the details to a minimum. "We're just taking some extra precautions, sweetie. Nothing to worry about. We're making sure everything is safe." Lily nodded, though her brow was still furrowed. "Okay, Dad." That night, as they settled into their routines, James found himself unable to shake the lingering sense of unease. He checked the locks and security cameras one more time before finally going to bed. He lay awake for hours, his mind racing with thoughts of how to protect his family and ensure their safety. As dawn broke, James resolved to face the renewed threat with the same courage and determination he had shown before. The past might have come back to haunt them, but he was ready to confront it head-on. He would continue to be the father and partner his family needed, no matter the obstacles. Together, they would face whatever came their way, knowing that their bond and their love were their greatest strengths. Sarah clung to James, her emotions raw and exposed. The safety they had worked so hard to build seemed to be slipping away, and the thought of uprooting their lives once more was overwhelming. But beneath the fear and frustration, there was a steely resolve to protect Lily and ensure their family's well-being. "We'll get through this," Sarah whispered, her voice muffled against James's shoulder. "We have to, for Lily." James nodded, his own emotions tightly controlled. "We'll make a plan, get everything in order. We'll make sure Lily knows that we're taking these steps for her safety, and that it's only temporary." He pulled back slightly to look at Sarah, determination in his eyes. "Let's start by packing a few essentials and making arrangements for the move. We should also let Lily know what's going on, but we need to keep it simple and reassuring." Sarah wiped her tears and nodded, her resolve matching James's. "All right, I'll start packing some things for Lily and us. We'll keep it light, so it doesn't feel too disruptive for her." They began gathering their belongings and working efficiently despite the emotional weight of the situation. James focused on making sure they had everything they needed for a temporary stay: important documents, some personal items, and essentials for Lily. As they worked, James knew they needed to keep Lily's spirits up. He decided to talk to her that evening, explaining the situation in a way that would make her feel safe and secure. They would make it a small adventure, a temporary change of scenery to help her adjust. When they finally sat down with Lily, James and Sarah made sure to keep their tone upbeat and reassuring. "Lily, we're going to take a little trip to a place that's going to be safe and fun for us," James said, trying to sound as cheerful as possible. "It's going to be a new adventure for a little while, but we'll all be together, and we'll make sure to keep everything as normal as possible." Lily looked up at them, her curiosity piqued but her trust in her parents unwavering. "Will we be coming back soon?" James smiled gently. "Yes, sweetheart. We'll come back when everything is safe again. It's just for a short time, and we'll make sure to have a good time while we're there." Sarah added, "We can make it special. Maybe we can explore some new places and do things we've never done before." Lily seemed to accept this, her earlier worry giving way to a tentative excitement about the new adventure. "Okay, Dad, can I bring my favorite toys?" "Of course," Sarah said, giving Lily a warm smile. "You can bring anything you want." With everything packed and plans set, James and Sarah made the move to his father's house, which, though not ideal, offered them a greater sense of security. The house was more remote, surrounded by open spaces that felt more secure compared to their apartment in the city. James felt a mix of relief and frustration as they settled in. The house provided the safety they needed, but the feeling of having to run from their own home weighed heavily on him. He was determined to make this transition as smooth as possible for Lily and Sarah, focusing on creating a comforting environment despite the circumstances. As days passed, they adapted to their temporary home. James and Sarah took turns keeping watch and maintaining communication with the police, ensuring that Lily's sense of normalcy was preserved as much as possible. They engaged in activities that Lily enjoyed and worked together to maintain a positive atmosphere. The challenges they faced were significant, but their commitment to each other and their determination to protect their family kept them strong. They were building resilience and finding strength in their unity, and slowly, the sense of insecurity began to give way to a renewed sense of hope. One evening, as they sat together in the cozy living room of the house, James looked at Sarah and Lily with a quiet sense of contentment. They had weathered the storm together, and despite the uncertainty, they had managed to create moments of joy and connection. "We'll get through this," James said softly, holding Sarah's hand and looking at Lily, who was happily playing with her toys. "We've faced challenges before, and we've come out stronger. This is no different. We have each other, and that's what matters most." Sarah squeezed his hand, her eyes filled with gratitude. "We do. And we'll keep moving forward, one step at a time." As they embraced their new routine, James found solace in the small victories, the laughter they shared, the comforting routines they established, and the growing sense of safety in their temporary haven. They were a family, bound by love and resilience, and no matter what came their way, they knew they would face it together. James and Sarah's decision to consider a fresh start was driven by their desire to give Lily a life free from fear and uncertainty. They knew that uprooting their lives yet again was a significant step, but they were determined to provide their daughter with a sense of security and normalcy. The days at the estate passed with a mix of relief and contemplation. They spent their time exploring the vast property with Lily, enjoying the tranquility and the reprieve from their recent troubles. Lily's laughter, echoing through the gardens, was a comforting reminder of why they were doing this, to protect and nurture the precious family bond they had. In the evenings, James and Sarah discussed their options with a growing sense of clarity. They explored potential new locations where they could start anew, places that offered both safety and a sense of community. They reached out to real estate agents, looked at listings online, and carefully considered what their new home should offer. The process of finding a new place was both daunting and exciting. James and Sarah knew that this move was not just about changing their address, it was about creating a new chapter in their lives, one that would allow them to leave behind the shadows of the past and embrace a brighter future. One afternoon, while Lily played in the gardens, James and Sarah sat at a small table on the terrace, discussing their findings. Sarah looked up from the paperwork and said, "I think we found a place that might be perfect. It's a bit further out from the city, in a quieter area, and it has a great community feel. I think it could be a good fit for us." James took the information from Sarah, his eyes scanning the details. "It looks promising. It's away from the city, which should help with security, and it seems like a good environment for Lily to grow up in." They decided to visit the potential new home the following weekend, eager to see if it felt right. As they prepared for the visit, they felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. The idea of moving was a big step, but it was also a chance to reclaim their lives and start over with a clean slate. On the day of the visit, they drove to the new location, discussing their hopes and concerns along the way. The new area was serene, with tree-lined streets and well-kept homes. As they approached the house, a sense of calm began to settle over them. The property was spacious, with a lovely backyard that seemed perfect for Lily to play and explore. Inside, the house was bright and welcoming, with plenty of room for their family to grow and flourish. They could imagine Lily's joy as she ran through the rooms, her laughter filling the space. The community around the house was friendly and safe, with good schools and parks nearby. After the visit, James and Sarah felt a renewed sense of hope. They knew it would be a challenge to move and adjust to a new environment, but they were confident that it was the right decision. They began making plans for the move, organizing their belongings, and preparing Lily for the transition. As they returned to the estate, they shared their excitement with Lily, framing the move as another adventure. They spoke about the new house with enthusiasm, emphasizing the positive aspects and the opportunities it would bring. Lily's response was mixed, but she seemed comforted by her parents' optimism. "It sounds like a fun place to live," she said, her curiosity piqued. "Will we have a big backyard to play in?" James smiled, feeling a sense of relief. "Yes, we'll have a great backyard and lots of space to explore. We'll make sure it feels like home, just like here." With their plans in place, James and Sarah continued to focus on making the transition as smooth as possible. They worked together to prepare their current home for sale, keeping in mind the importance of a fresh start and the promise of a safer, more secure future. As they packed up their belongings and prepared for the move, they did so with a sense of purpose and hope. They were leaving behind the fears of the past and stepping into a future filled with possibility. Together, they would face the challenges ahead, knowing that their strength and unity would guide them through. In the end, it was the love they shared and their commitment to each other that made all the difference. They were building a new life, one filled with the promise of security, happiness, and the joy of being a family. And as they looked forward to their new home, they knew that they were ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that they had each other to rely on. As James and Sarah sat together in their new home, the deep blue of the evening sky mirrored their feelings of calm and renewal. The house, which had quickly become a refuge, symbolized their fresh start, a space where they could finally let go of their fears and embrace a future filled with possibilities. The days in their new neighborhood were filled with small joys and new routines. Lily, with her boundless energy, thrived in the expansive backyard and the nearby park. The sense of security and freedom she now enjoyed was a testament to the hard work and sacrifices her parents had made to ensure her happiness. James and Sarah made a conscious effort to reconnect with their community, attending local events and building relationships with their new neighbors. It was important to them to weave their lives into the fabric of this new place, creating a network of support and friendship that would help them feel truly at home. Though they remained vigilant, staying in touch with Detective Reynolds for updates on their previous threat, the constant anxiety that once hung over them began to fade. The new environment provided them with a buffer, a sense of normalcy that was hard to come by in their previous life. They focused on the present and the future, celebrating each small victory along the way, whether it was Lily's first day at a new school or Sarah's success in a community project. In their quiet moments, James and Sarah often reflected on their journey. They acknowledged the pain and challenges they had faced, but they also celebrated their resilience and the strength of their bond. They had navigated through storms, emerged stronger, and created a life that was rich in love and stability. One evening, as they sat on their porch, enjoying the gentle breeze and the peaceful surroundings, James turned to Sarah. "It's hard to believe how far we've come," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "I never imagined we'd be here, but I'm so thankful we are." Sarah smiled, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the lanterns on the porch. "Me too. It's been a tough road, but it's also been one of the most rewarding. We've built something beautiful here, something that's ours, and we did it together." Their words were a promise to each other to continue building on the foundation they had laid, to nurture their love and their family, and to face whatever the future held with courage and hope. They knew that life would continue to have its ups and downs, but they were ready to meet those challenges head-on, knowing that they had the strength and unity to overcome anything. As they watched the night sky deepen into darkness, the stars emerging one by one, James and Sarah felt a profound sense of peace. They had weathered the storms of their past and emerged into a brighter, more hopeful future. Their new home was not just a place, it was a testament to their journey, their love, and their unyielding spirit. Together, they were ready for whatever came next, knowing that as long as they faced it side by side, they could handle anything. Their new beginning was a chance to embrace life fully, cherish their moments together, and look forward to a future built on the enduring strength of their family. As we come to the end of our journey together today, I hope you found inspiration and insight in the story we've shared. From facing fears to embracing new beginnings, this journey highlights the strength and resilience that can guide us through the most challenging times. What have you learned from James and Sarah's story? How can these lessons be applied to your own life? Share one thing you've learned and how you plan to bring it into practice in the comments below. Your experiences and reflections are invaluable, and I'd love to hear how this story has impacted you. If you enjoyed this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support helps us continue to create content that inspires and uplifts. Thank you for being part of our community. Until next time, take care and stay inspired.